Hey, welcome. I see folks are making it into the room. Fantastic. Thanks for being with us here on a Sunday afternoon. Afternoon for me, I guess morning for some of y'all. Um, I guess in the interest of maximizing our time together, I'm going to go ahead and start our introduction. It's a huge pleasure to have y'all here today. My name's Liberty, and I'm a member of the Firestorm Collective. We're really excited today to be hosting author Adrienne Maree Brown alongside Black Dawn series editor Sanina Clark. Together, they're going to be discussing Adrienne's new book, Ancestors, which is the conclusion of the Grievers Trilogy. Uh, it's very exciting. I know some of y'all were with us when we got to host a Black Dawn launch event in 2021, so long ago. Yep, that included that very first book in the trilogy. So go back and revisit that if you haven't. Um, in case this is your first Firestorm event, I'll give you a little introduction to us. We're a 17-year-old radical bookstore owned and operated by a queer feminist collective in Southern Appalachia on the land of the Cherokee people. And we do a lot of events in person, but also still love getting a chance to connect online like this. It's a great way to connect with authors and audiences across distance. And it's also a great way to make sure that we have some spaces with lower barrier to participation for folks for whom in-person gathering is a challenge. So if you're interested, you can definitely check out our calendar for upcoming events. We actually have a lot of really great AK Press author events happening in the next month, including a conversation tomorrow with Matt Broomfield, and then an upcoming one with Rashida Phillips, Janina Irvin, and Robin Maynard. So lots of incredible conversations. So for today, we are using Zoom for all of its ups and downs. By this point in your life, you may know that there is a Q&A tool in Zoom, which I would really encourage you to write out questions using. It's great if you want to put some questions in there as we go. And so then when we get to the last 20 minutes of our time together, we can already have some things to take a peek at, and we'll do our best to talk about what you submit. There's also an open chat. Definitely feel free to chime in there. It would be really great to hear how many of y'all have read Ancestors, have been following this series, or should no spoilers today? Let us know. Put it in the chat. I'll keep an eye. But if you have a question for Adrienne, please use the Q&A. It'll help us keep track of it. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to just share quick bios. Adrienne Maree Brown grows healing ideas in public through her multi-genre writing, her collaborations, and her podcasts. Informed by 25 years of movement facilitation, somatics, Octavia E. Butler scholarship, and her work as a doula, Adrienne has nurtured emergent strategy, pleasure activism, radical imagination, and transformative justice as ideas and practices for change. As you may know, some of her books include Emergent Strategy, the New York Times bestselling Pleasure Activism, We Will Not Cancel Us, Loving Corrections, and her two prior novellas in the series, Grievers and Maroons. If you haven't read all these fantastic books, I encourage you to. You can pick them up from our co-op. Next up, we've got Sanina L. Clark, who is the editor of Out of Salem by Hal Shriver and All City by Alex DeFrancesco. And although Sanina has worked on a variety of different types of books, they prioritize acquiring texts written by or about people who are queer, trans, women, or POC. And they are the editor of the Black Dawn series under AK Press, this fantastic speculative novella series that we're talking about today. Thank you so much, Sanina, for being here. Thank you, Adrienne, for joining us. It's a huge pleasure to have you both back.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I love Firestorm. It's always good to do stuff with y'all.
Alrighty. And thank you for that wonderful introduction to both of us. I'm really excited to be back here. We started the Black Dawn series off with a virtual event with Firestorm and Margaret Killjoy. And now we are back here to discuss ancestors. So Adrienne, you have something to kick us off with?
Sure, yeah. I thought I would just read the opening text of this book, Ancestors. There's no spoilers. Let's see. Makes it blurry a little bit, but anyway. Yeah, I'll read this. This is the prologue. Even when it all seems to be falling apart, something deeper down is busy mending. After the storm washes one world away, be astounded. Look how many creatures are already building the next world in the rubble and mud, persistent. This is who we are, time workers. As long as there is a pulse between us, there are many places to grow and many lives to live. When there appears to be no way out, we go wild inside ourselves, into the infinite interior. Detroit had been a city of beauty and corruption, ubiquitous blackness and post capitalist solution. Now, Detroit has become a land of grief and possibility, of risk and absence, a fertile soil thick with spiritual hunger and people determined to live against all odds. Less than 1,000 people are left in the city after the H8 virus lifted generations of Black souls out of their bodies and scared everyone else into evacuation. 3 years into their survival, most of them have moved into Murmur City, once known as the General Motors Renaissance Center on the Detroit River. A community of Anishinaabe and other indigenous survivors are making an old new way in the middle of the river on an island they know well. Other survivors still run wild. They are all protected or contained by an impenetrable wall of vines and lush leaves sprouted from magic. The wilderness has become the norm.
Amazing, fantastic, and so full of hope, um, in a novel that is very much also full of grief, hence the title of the first book, Grievers. Um,
Mhm.
and so I guess to start us off with that, things are falling apart in real life.
Yeah,
um, and
yeah.
so how do I guess we have that hope when things are so full of turmoil and
Mhm.
so full of hopelessness? How to find the hope when everyone feels hopeless?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, well, before I even go there, I want to say thank you to you, Sanina, because this risk that you took, this bet that you made with Black Dawn of inviting me to submit something to kick the series off and trusting me with this set of writing that at the beginning it was like, is this a novel, novella, trilogy? What is this? And really coming back and being like, I think it's a trilogy and I can see it. And your hope in the work really has invited something forward that allowed me to really explore my own hope and hopelessness, my despair and grief. So thank you to you. Thank you to Black Dawn and AK for trusting in this, believing in this all the way through. Um, and yeah, I think the things that give me hope in times of hopelessness, one is the sheer fact that we're not extinct. So that we have, as a species, gone through many, many rounds of conflict, obliteration, genocide, colonization, um, virus, man made and otherwise. That we have gone through many apocalypses, that we have gone through many things that feel like this is it, this is the end, there's no way forward. And we've gone through immense loss, like with each of those things, it's like we're really losing real people that we love, we're really losing land that we love, we're losing futures that we wanted to live into, but we're still here. And um, particularly as someone with Black American ancestry, I'm like, I am the survivor of people who were taken from the place that they imagined their future, dropped into a whole nother place, and have found a way to keep going and bringing joy, keep going and growing gardens in their backyard, carrying seeds in their hair and finding a way to keep that going. I just read a story the other day of someone who had a song that had been passed down in their family, that they had been given this song, and that for 200 years, the song kept being passed down, that was carried across the Middle Passage and, began in Senegal somewhere. I'm like, that's the kind of people we come from. And I think we all have stories like that of ways that our ancestors kept some part of themselves to carry forward and pass on and persist. So that gives me hope. And looking at how communities continue, in circumstances where, like, oh, you could give up. I would understand why you would give up now, but our human nature is not to give up. Our human nature collectively is to persist and keep going and make a way out of no way. That always makes me feel hopeful. And then I think love, like, I am always astounded at the way, even in war times, even in great moments of oppression, that humans look at each other and find ways to love each other, romantically, platonically, familially. And if we can't find each other, we love the land, and the land loves us back. So it's, to me, it's like the underlying tendency is persistent survival and love. The aberration is this desire to destroy each other and destroy our environment. And the fact that we persist, that always gives me a lot of hope. And wanting to write something like that I was like, I want to write my own way through apocalypse and kind of feel for like what would make me still want to keep going, which feels like it's in the spirit of Octavia Butler, that she wrote things where it's like, it's not necessarily a hopeful ideology, it's not necessarily a hopeful story, but the fact that we keep going and we make something connective, something visionary, something, we throw forward a rope into the future and start pulling ourselves along it. There's something there. Um, so yeah, that's how I work with hope, I think.
I want to touch upon something you just said about love and the start to the trilogy, and even us being like, is this a novel? Is this a trilogy? And just I know that I was there for that process, but I guess letting everyone else know, like, what was it that led us to deciding like this would be better as a trilogy? And also the topic of love, with this trilogy being a love letter to Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, for folks who are not as familiar with this set of writing, I started writing this in 2011, and I didn't have a form in mind. I just had a story to tell. I was like, there's something. I was living in Detroit at the time, and I was driving around this city with people who had been in the city their whole lives or much longer than me. And every time we would go anywhere, they were pointing out to me the past and how the past laid on top of the present for them. That they were like, that used to be the Motown building, and this used to be this whole beautiful Black community, and this used to be this, and this used to be that. And to me, love, one of the ways love works is it helps us remember places and remember people and keep them present even when they're no longer physically there. So I started working on the story. I knew there was something about grief, and that Detroit carried a lot of grief, some of it processed, but a lot of it unnamed, unprocessed. It was like people are just figuring out how to keep going. But it's like, how do you keep going in a ghost town? How do you keep going in a place that has been abandoned? How do you keep going in a place that, um, yeah, that a lot of people look at as a failure or a dangerous place or something else? Like, but then you're in that place, you're walking those streets, and what you see is beautiful, and what you see is community, and what you see is um, kind of a rejection of capitalism and other stuff. So I really wanted to play with all of that. Detroit taught me a ton about Black survival and both the possibilities and limits of Black power. Where it's like, yeah, even when every official is a Black person, it doesn't mean we're free. It doesn't mean we're actually breaking out of these cycles. Um, but it does change something when Black people are trying to figure it out together and trying to protect something together. So I brought this thing to you that was like, I tried writing a short story, I tried it as a play. I was like, maybe it's just a series of songs, maybe it's a novel. And I had kind of gotten like, I don't know, 300 pages or something. I was like, I got a bunch of stuff here. And then when I handed it to you, and you came back, you were like, I've read it all. I actually think it's a trilogy because it hasn't ended. Like what you've written to me has opened up a lot of boxes, but they're not closed. So I think you've given me the first two sections of a trilogy here. And there's a third part of the story. And it was so exciting because I was like, yes, you see it. Like it's this bigger kind of epic thing that's happening. But it can be told in these chunks, and it can be told, it was important to me that each book be able to kind of stand on its own and stand in relationship to the others. Um, but now that they're all out, it's so exciting because, I think generally the wisdom is like when you're starting to write something large, you want to know where you're going to land. And for me with this, I was like, I don't know yet where I want to land. I feel like I'm in partnership with the city, and the city's got to keep unveiling more and more to me. Um, it's also meaningful to me that the first two books, Grievers and Maroons, were both mapped out long before COVID came along. And then they were coming out during this COVID time period where it's like, oh, yeah, of course we're dealing with cities and viruses and like that's our norm. But that wasn't what was present as much. I was like, I feel this coming. Um, and then getting to write the third book, getting to feel into it and be like, okay, now I'm in the world of apocalypse and virus and all these things, and getting to land the book where I was like, we do need a little magic to get through this kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a ton of magic. I don't want a superhero, but I do want everyone to have to tap into their own magic a little bit to get us through. And I don't think that's too much of a spoiler to say. It's a big part of the book is that there's a little magic, and there's a little miracle, and there's a lot of community. But there's also a real need to process grief. And I wanted to make sure that the grief doesn't go away, that it's not like you reach the end and you're like, great. It's like we reach the end and we figure out how to carry on with grief. And we're grateful to have more time to be able to do that. Yeah, so it was fun. It was fun to write at this scale. And it was fun to work with you as an editor also to kind of feel into like, oh, we can leave this part out of the first book, we can move it to the second. And like I felt like you helped me really be like, oh yeah, like that'll be better here. And the love story to Detroit, like I think most people also have heard this, but if you haven't, each of the characters is based on someone that I knew who passed away during the time that I was living in Detroit. So all of the major characters, they're not exact replicas of those people, but they carry some energy of Grace Lee Boggs, of Charity Hicks, of David Blair, of Ron Scott, of these organizers and poets and thinkers and shapers, of Shetty, of all these people who were like, they're a big part of my Detroit experience, who are no longer there. But I'm like, you need to know that if you're going to love Detroit, you love these people too, you know? And it's been so cool to get the feedback from people who are like, I've never even been to Detroit, but now I feel like I have. And to get feedback from Detroiters who are like, wow, you really did that. I really see my city and feel the city on the pages. And that was my hope too, is that I want Detroit to be seen as a magical place, like the way Sonoma is in Arizona or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, or Sedona. It's like there's this magic portal, and I'm like, yeah, Detroit's also a magic portal. It's just a black magic portal. And I want people to know that, and with that when they're, if they ever get to go there, that they're looking around and being like, oh, I recognize some of these aspects of this city. I like that when people go to Detroit now, when they see the Renaissance Center, there's a new possibility in their mind for like what that space could be. Yeah, so I love that place, and I think that comes through.
I also think it comes through. And I also think your love for magic and magical realism and um magic within ourselves comes through as well. And Dune has so much magic that she didn't realize that she had. And so
Right.
one of my favorite things about Dune's character arc is going from this person who really doesn't believe her mom's magic and doesn't believe in her mom's um magical fortitude. She's just like, my mom's kooky, and it just washes over her head. And then throughout the book, she takes on more and more of her mother's characteristics, and with that, her magic gets stronger and stronger. And so, for you, how does that correlate with your magical journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like someone who it's taken me a while to understand intergenerational magic. That I think a lot of times when we look at our grandparents, great grandparents, our parents, we're raised by these people. And so part of our work is differentiating from them and being like, oh, you're like that. I'm not like that. Like, you have these limitations that society set on you, but I don't have those. And sometimes we don't notice, like, what is the magic you had to have to survive and to become yourself? What are the ways that you broke with the expectations and structures of your time in order to find yourself and become yourself? And I know with my family, like when I go back, if I talk to my grandparents, if I talk to my parents, if I listen for the stories, there's always a little like, oh, there's something in them that they even know that they had this little magic. And I regularly meet people like that where I'm like, oh, it's not just loud, charismatic people that have magic. A lot of times it's the quiet storm people. It's the person over in the corner. It's the person who's really contained and turned inwards. I wanted to talk about the magic of that pressure that turns inwards. Dune is raised by parents who are very extroverted, organizers, outward, magical. And she's like, I'm a deep well. It's all in here. But there's a different alchemy that happens when it's happening within you. And then I wanted something where the magic was related to who she loved and who had loved her. So the ways that her magic happens is very much related to, like, she had a researcher dad, someone who was like, I'm gathering all the data, I'm building models, I'm tracking everything. That's a magic, right? I'm like, there's a magic to that level of attention and comprehensiveness that makes something possible. So that's part of Dune's magic. And then her mother is this woman who's like, you know, like many people, like maybe a little crazy, maybe doesn't quite work. Like, she can't really figure out how to work inside of capitalism. She can't quite get her head above water. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have a huge understanding of what community needs to do and how communities build. And I find that to be true in my own life. There's a lot of people that are like, I don't have my shit together. But I'm like, but you have something else together, your spiritual shit, right? Or your ability to listen to the ancestors. The ancestors are not going to give you instructions that necessarily work for the world you're in. They're giving you instructions that work for the greater interconnected oneness world, right? So I wanted all that to be present in Dune, and I wanted to be able to write a character who is given enough room in which to feel into her magic. So that's a huge function of this book, is that Dune spends a lot of time alone. She spends a lot of time like in her own feelings, having to really reckon with herself in the absence of her loved ones. And then she has to really make a choice to let love in again, to move towards others, to move towards connection. Um, I have rarely felt that kind of spaciousness in my life. I've always felt like everything's pressing in, and I have to try to carve out some room for myself to think or to feel. And so I just gave her an abundance of solitude. And um, I think there's also something about place that is a big part of the magic that's available anywhere. And so Detroit has a magic to it. Detroit is a surviving city. Detroit is sitting on a bunch of salt mines. Detroit has this river that has a lot of energy. And, if you've ever lived on a river or been near a river, like a river is a living being. A river has energy, it has ghosts, it has memories, it has a story to tell. So I wanted all of that to be a part of it too. That's like Dune would be a different person if she was in a different place. Like, what would have emerged in her would be different. But because she's in Detroit, she has to have a magic that interacts with the river and interacts with the root system and interacts with the saltiness and interacts with those aspects of Detroit. Um, and as the trilogy goes on, we see other people have little magics too, right? And so that matters a lot to me. I didn't want to have a character that's like everything comes down to just relying on what she can do. There's a lot of times where she can't just do it by herself. She needs mentorship. She needs peers. She needs someone who loves her deeply and is figuring out how to reckon with their own magic. She needs to get back in relationship with the place itself. She needs a wand that comes from this place. She needs these things, relationship. And I feel like as a healer, there's that tendency sometimes like, let me just go get my house on the edge of town and be by myself and make my little tinctures. But my magic is much stronger when I come into relationship with others, and when I'm listening and I'm in community and I'm in rooting into the place that I'm in. All of a sudden I become much more powerful in what I'm able to do. So there's some instruction there, right? For folks, it's like, if you're really trying to tap into your magic, it's about figuring out who you need to be in relationship to and learning from and rooting what you need to be rooting into. It's not just about sitting by yourself and being like, magic, you know? It's not something you figure out here. It's something that comes from the heart and the soil. So, yeah.
And we see Dune's magic manifest in multiple ways. Um, Over the course of the trilogy, it's like she just keeps getting more and more, dare I say, powerful, or her own version of powerful, even when she feels very much overwhelmed by
Yes.
her ability to create the things that she creates. But
Mm.
something that I noticed is that Dune's magic is very much tied to the earth and the past.
Yes.
Um, and then versus the Woods magic, which is very much magic of the voice.
Yes.
He is
In the
speaking
present.
magic.
Mhm.
And so, with these characters, and maybe even with yourself, do you feel that we are all inherently born with a very specific type of magic, or does our magic develop based on who we are as people? Like, which comes
Yeah.
first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, I think this is great. I do think that we're born with a channel, right? So I think each of us has like some channel through which that divine force that shapes the world wants to flow. And I think for some people, the channel is teaching. For some people, the channel is singing. For some, it's writing. For some, it's ritual. For some, it's growing food. Like there's some channel through which we're supposed to offer care and offer shaping of the world to our community. I think when people are experiencing depression or hyperanxiety or hypervigilance, a lot of times that's because they're not tapped into their channel. So the thing that's trying to flow through them is like either misdirected, or it's just building up a charge that's never able to release. So they're not able to actually let the thing come through and actually do what it needs to do. And I do think that some people's magic is about integrating the past into the present moment. I think some people's magic is about getting people in the present to come into awakened sensibility of like, oh, I have power right now. Like I'm being told I don't, but I can feel that I do. And actually speaking it, singing it, being in community around it helps it to grow. And then I also think there are people who have a magic of the future, seers, people who have a prophetic touch, people who are able to see the patterns and come to some conclusion. You know, Octavia Butler was like that, where I'm like, she has a magic of the future. She's able to look at what's happening now and sort of see ahead. And what she sees, her magic of being able to see and lay that out allows other people to be like, oh, yeah, how do I want to approach the horizon? Like, what is my orientation to the future? So I do think most people have some variation or some version of that. And I think there's a way of being in right relationship with each other across our powers. So for me, for instance, I'm a writer, but I also have a power of voice. I have some prophetic power. There's a real like integrating the past and the present, or the past towards the present. I'm not in competition with anyone else, right? My channel is my channel. I just have to clear it and let what I need to come flow through. There are other writers, there are other singers, there are other people who do ritual. I'm not in competition with either of them. They also need to be opening these channels. It's actually the best thing for me is for the people around me to be fully tapped into what their channels are. Then we can activate something together. And I think that's what we see happen in the relationships in the book, is that when Dune and Dawood come together, their magics converge and create something else. When they come across another character, when they come across Mama Rue, when they come across other people, each person is like, oh, this opens even more, this opens even more, this opens even more. And I was particularly interested with like Mama Rue is a character that shows up in the second book. She's older. She's seen as someone who's really kooky and out there and just like off the map. But the way her magic works is cacophonous. It's really overwhelming. And so the more you understand about that, the more you can be like, oh, she's not being rude. She's not an asshole. She's just like really overwhelmed with the spiritual downloads she's getting and trying to figure out how to bring those to people. And I know people like that. I know a lot of people like that where I'm like, wow, that person really seems out of it. But I'm like, the more I listen to them, I'm like, they're literally tapped into a different channel and trying to figure it out. And if I can just allow them room to do their channel, right, and not take it personally, but just be like, how do I pair with that? How do we pair with that? Um, there's something about ego, right, that has to kind of move out of the way so that we can actually do our magic and not be like, I'm so special, I'm magic. It's like, I'm supposed to help you unlock yours. You're supposed to help me unlock mine. We're all supposed to be contributing something to this. And in my life, some of the people who've made the greatest impact on me are people who were not trying to. They were just being themselves and letting whatever wisdom or whatever presence needed to flow through them move. And that's why I'm like, everyone is my teacher. You know, people who cause me discomfort, they're teaching me something. People who make me angry are teaching me something. People who teach me I need boundaries, right? That's important. I need to learn that. So a lot of this is like how I have figured out how to navigate the magic that I have, how I've learned to be in relationship with other very powerful people. And then when I see someone who's not in their power, how do I help activate and invite that forward rather than shut it down or be like, just come follow me. I'm like, I don't need followers. I need partners. I need people to be in relationship with me so we can do what we need to do here. So it was exciting to try to play with that in the book. And also to have people come into awareness, like the magic is there whether you're using it or not. So a lot of times our friends or our loved ones can see our magic clearer than we can, you know? And I also think a lot of times people just don't even know their power. So it was so exciting to me to be like, Dune, you don't even know. Just like making love, you could change the future. Just like, you know, creating an altar, you could change the future. Just like touching a tree, you could change the future, right? But I've had those experiences, so I know that they are possible. Oh, is it hard to hear me? Hold on. Maybe if I put my microphone, tell me, does that make it a little easier? Do I sound?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
we're also just having such a like
Tender.
we're having a tender conversation. And so things tend to get quieter now. We do have a few comments in the chat.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
fact, one of the comments came from my mom. She said, my
Mom.
mom is here. She said, I love this because it shows we are all interconnected by mind. It just needs to be brought out.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, and in fact, my next question was going to be about that channel.
Yeah.
We are, and like you said, sometimes it either it's our ego or it's something else, it's depression, it's something else that is preventing us from reaching that channel or figuring out what that channel is,
Yeah.
especially during times like this where we are so bogged down with all the
Yeah.
terribleness that is happening in the world. How
Yeah.
do we as activists find our channel?
Yeah. This is good. So a lot of what comes through, I just recently had a song come through that was like, because I was like, I'm feeling so overwhelmed by my emotions these days. And so sometimes I'm like, I just can't do anything because I'm feeling so sad. Or I'm feeling so heartbroken. And this song came through that was like, we're not broken, we're not broken, we're not broken, we're not broken. This is how it's supposed to feel when we see what you're doing. And it was like, oh, my activist self, my active self is actually empowered by feeling the reality of what's happening. A lot of opening the channel is not trying to push it away or ignore it or act like something's not happening, but to turn and face it and be like, my heart is broken. Let me feel the brokenness of my heart because that'll help me figure out what I need to do, how I need to live, the actions I need to take, the relationships I need to be in. I can't be in relationship with people who can't acknowledge that there's genocides happening in the world. I can't be in relationship with people who can't acknowledge that climate crisis is unfolding. I can love people, right? I can be, I just came from being with family where there's a wide variety of political spectrum and feeling and everything else. And I can love those people. We can sit and play cards, but they know what matters to me. They know these things break my heart. They know I cry about this stuff every day, and they have to operate accordingly, right? And I'm not using my emotion to try to manipulate anything. I'm really feeling it. And I'm like, it breaks my heart. And I want to make sure you understand my heartbreak, right? Like so much of organizing, I don't think we acknowledge this enough, but so much of organizing happens because someone broke our heart in some way, right? People organize because a kid was killed in their neighborhood. People organize because someone has toxified their land or stolen their land. People organize because someone they love is now behind bars unjustly, but there's heartbreak in it. It's our power to be like, that's not right. It's so not right. It causes me such despair. It's so wrong that I have to do something about it. So a lot of opening the channel is actually letting ourselves feel what we truly feel in the reality that we're in. I also really pay attention to numbness, right? That I'm like, oh, if we're in a world where there's a lot of apocalyptic things happening, and all we can do is zone out and dissociate and be like, I'm just going to look away. I'm just going to watch some reality TV. I'm going to freeze. I'm not going to take any action. I'm going to try to push the feeling down. That benefits the system so much, right? When we're like, I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to not feel it. Now I try to be mindfully dissociative. Like when I'm like, okay, I have felt a lot, I've been crying a lot. Now I need to give myself a little break. Now I need to take it out, that I know I'm taking action. I know I'm letting that shape me. I don't want to shut the channel down. I just need to give myself some rest. So I think learning that distinction of like, I'm not escaping, I'm resting, but I'm regularly in relationship with my feelings about the reality of this time. And, we live in a time right now where there's so many issues for which we could stop everything and just be like, oh, democracy is breaking down. We need to stop everything and attend to that. The climate is out of control. We're having fires and floods and everything. We need to stop everything and attend to that. The world we live in, the only way it works is by getting us to keep going in those times and to keep normalizing that that's okay, and to keep acting as if the water is not boiling, to keep acting as if the flood is not happening, or to act as if it's not our responsibility. There's nothing we can do. And I keep being like, no, no, no. It only is allowed to happen because we put down our responsibility and say, there's nothing I can do. If everyone feels that way, then there is nothing we can do. If everyone instead is like, this is untenable, this is unbearable, we have to do something about it every day, even if it's small, we have to do something. Since this latest round of genocide started in Israel against Palestine, I haven't been like, I can drop everything and just go and sit at the door of Gaza and try to get food in. Like, that's not what I can do. But every single day in my life, I have done something. I have talked to someone. I have used my platform. I have written songs and poems. I have built stories. I have interviewed people who know about the issue. Like every day, I'm doing what I can to be like, we all need to contend with this. We all need to recognize who pays the taxes, who's funding this, who's responsible. Like, there's something we can do. I'm like, I'm in relationship to it. I'm in relationship to what's happening in the Congo. I'm in relationship to what's happening in the Sudan, because we're all interconnected. And some of us have more power inside of those interconnections. And by power there, I mean, some of us have voting power in a place that is funding this. There's something we have to do, right? Bringing that into a narrative, bringing that into a fictional realm, you microcosm the whole world. So it's like, okay, I've just told y'all, like, now let's say that we only have less than 1,000 people. How do we hold? It's the same thing happening. Even in that 1,000 people, there's someone spinning out, there's someone suicidal, there's some harm that's happened, even in a small microcosm. And sometimes that's the easier place. Like, well, how would we deal with it if it was just this group of people? What would we do? Oh, a genocide has happened here in this town. How do we bury our dead? How do we keep ourselves safe? How do we move forward? So I'm always asking people to do that. It's like, how do you bring the real world into your world? And how do you let that be something that opens your channel? feel the reality of what's happening, and then figure out what's my response to it. And I'm lucky. I feel very lucky that in this lifetime I was granted artistry as my work, right? That is like the thing I'm supposed to do is to work with music and storytelling and poetry in order to raise awareness, in order to shapeshift, in order to help open people's hearts and minds. A lot of times when I'm writing stuff, you know, there's a part of me that's like, I want to make it literarily, you know, it needs to be perfectly written. But that's actually, my ministry is not about the perfection of the writing. My ministry is about the perfection of the feeling. That I'm really like, oh, what matters to me is like what people feel when they read my writing. You know, sometimes I'll write a song or a poem and I'm like, I don't know what I would change about it because it makes me cry every time I read it. And I think that's what it's supposed to do. And maybe the words could be better or prettier, but the feeling is really pure. With this trilogy, I feel like that, where I'm like, you know, I'm sure there's literary ways I could do this better, but the feeling I have of loving Detroit, the feeling I have of wanting to honor ancestors, the feeling I have of wanting to give people a possibility of how we survive apocalypse, all of that feels very pure. And that's how I knew when the book was complete, that I was like, okay, like I can feel that the grief that sent me into these pages has moved through me. And I can now sit in a lot of possibility. Like I can already see that Detroit. And I can already see that Detroit opens up this possibility for how we be human together. It really calms something in me. And other people are reading it. That's also an interesting part of a channel, is that you open it and it doesn't just end, right? I'm like, oh, now other people are reading this at their own pace. And so then people will come back to me and be like, ah, I just got to this thing. Oh my God, you know, or whatever. And I'm like, great, that channel it will continuously open as long as the book is in the world. And then I also am like, someday the book might not be in the world. Someday there might be no books in the world. The channel still gets to be open on the other side of that, right? Like whatever that possibility was that was seeded still gets to be there. And I like that idea that art is like that you're like, I'm throwing my seeds out and like, who knows what will grow from that. Hopefully it'll grow beyond me in my lifetime.
As far as acting within your activism,
Mm,
and I know sometimes even as activists, we ourselves, there's that activism guilt where we feel like we're not doing enough.
yeah.
And so what do you say to someone who feels that way, like that they can't see the value in their everyday activities affecting
Mhm.
the world?
Oh yeah. I think there's two things here. I think one of them is it's really hard to break out of individualism when you've been socialized into individualism. And particularly for those of us in the West, particularly for those of us who are living in the US in the belly of this capitalist, you know, racialized capitalist beast, the way we're supposed to think, we're trained to think is like, I need to get ahead. I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps. I need to make sure I'm financially secure and that my people, my family, my whatever I've decided is good. And so then even when we switch to activism and we're like, oh, now I'm getting turned on to a new way of being, that individualism can still be there where it's like, I've got to save the world. So like when it first activated me, I'm like, you know, one of the first big direct actions I took was when the Iraq war was kicking off. And I went and tried to shut down 6th Avenue in New York by myself because I was just so enraged. And I was like, everything has to stop. And it wasn't like thoughtful, it wasn't strategic. You know, I did another action of being a war tax resistor. I was doing it by myself, like me. And it took a while for me to learn. I'm like, I alone can never do enough because these are systemic problems. If I think like an individual, I will always feel disappointed and I will never feel like we're doing enough. So one of the first things is to sort of recognize like we're dealing with a whole system full of all these people and all these complex issues that are interconnected and that took a long time. Like this system didn't just show up overnight. A lot of shaping and thinking and limited imagination. It's taken a lot of that to get us into this little box where we're like, you have to be a white male, to be successful, to change the world. I'm like, oh, when you start to think like, I do this with others, whatever it is I'm able to do, I can only do it with others. It doesn't have to be a ton of people, but I do have to be with others so that we can tip a scale, so that we can do something together. The second piece of it is there's a humility that comes with recognizing when we don't have the power we need for the thing we want to do, even collectively. So that's a real feeling. Like, this period of time has been so humbling because there's so many people who are like, I want the right to abortion. I want trans people to be safe. I want borders that make people feel respected and like they can seek asylum and that they can feel they can build a life where they want to be. I want to live in a world that protects the earth. I want to live in a world that doesn't starve babies. I want to live in a world that matches my values and is humane. And I know I'm not alone. Millions of us want this, but we don't have the political power. We don't have the structures. We don't have the leverage right now to say we don't want that to happen and it doesn't happen. We do want this to happen and it does. So collectively, we have to be in that humility to be like, hold on, what do we need to do differently to have a different outcome? And I think that that combo, right? When I'm feeling that, when I'm like, and I have so many times in my adult life felt this, like I want something and I'm despairing because I feel like a failure. Like I must not have done my job well because why is this happening? That's my ego, right? Now I understand that that's my ego. When I'm having that feeling, I'm like, well, who did I try to do it with? Let me try to do this with other people. Let me talk to other people about what we could do differently. Right now, I'm hopeful that a lot of people, especially people who think of themselves on the left or as progressives or as more humane oriented people, I hope that a lot of us are like, yeah, we need to be humble and recognize like we want the power to do something that we don't have right now. So we have to deepen how we build relationship with each other and deepen how we get aligned around what we're practicing. Yeah, I think the only other thing too that's really been, and I think this is what emerges in this story. The story kind of taught me this, right? Is that we have to be able to create pockets of possibility models, right? Pockets of possibility where we're like, okay, we might not be able to do this everywhere, but we need to start practicing it somewhere so that we get the practice in our systems, right? That maybe no one else will know this, but if we don't even try it, then we'll never know if it could work, So that's how I'm living my life now is I'm like, I know all this shit is going crazy, but I've created a small pocket of people that I'm practicing something else with. And we're practicing centering children in our lives. We're practicing creating a safety in which anybody can be their whole selves. We're practicing being in right relationship with the earth. We're making pockets of that practice. Those pockets become compelling, right? Whenever I hear or think about the Zapatistas, it enlivens me that I'm like, I know that they're out there, that they have been, for as long as I've been politically awakened, they have been living in a sovereign experiment that they created for themselves. I know that that's out there. I know that there's a landless workers movement. I know that there are folks fighting for Palestinian freedom. I know that there are folks in Ireland practicing, like I just know that there's these pockets where people are doing things already right now the way that I am aligned with. So we haven't erased that humanity. It's still happening somewhere. And then tides do start to turn when enough of those pockets are activated and making themselves visible and making themselves heard. So just looking at this past 2 years, when I first stepped up and was like, we have to stop this. It's a genocide, right? When I first stepped out to say that, I felt very alone. I looked around, I was like, I don't see a ton of people saying this. People would say, I agree with you privately, but there weren't people taking that risk publicly as many. Now it's like I open up my feed and everywhere I look, tons of people are saying that same thing, right? Which doesn't mean I need to stop saying it, but it's just like that pocket of people who understand what's happening and who see this as unfair has grown exponentially because a lot of people at an individual level are like, oh, I also feel that way and I'm going to say so. And the more people who say so, the more people who say what they really feel out loud, right? The more we can actually deal with reality and change reality. And it still doesn't mean we can change what's happening, right? So I'm really sitting with that. Like right now, I'm like, yeah, how do we make a world beyond genocide? How do we make a world beyond climate catastrophe? How do we make a world beyond capitalism, I'm thinking about those things. And I recently had a conversation with Chinyere Tutashinda on my podcast, How to Survive the End of the World, with my sister. And she was saying, you know, we shouldn't feel embarrassed that we don't know how to beat capitalism. We've never done it before. You know, like en masse, we have never done that before. So we actually don't know yet how to do it, you know? And it's not like when people were like, fiefdoms are fucked up, that it just automatically was like, now we ended it. It's like, no, we're talking about a whole economic model that the whole world is functioning inside of. We don't know how to change that yet, but we are a generation that will contribute to learning how to do that, right? We are a generation where more and more of us will be like, I opt out of this. I want to do things differently. I want to be in a different practice. That makes me feel very hopeful that I'm like, inside this moment right now, with the agency I have over my life, I'm choosing to live in alignment with my values and to push against the systems that exist already, to say like, I can't be contained by your limited imagination, because mine is beyond all that. And that's my job. Just like Harriet Tubman in her time was like, y'all think I'm a slave, but I already know that my people are free. So I can't be bound by your imagination. And I'm going to act like an agent of the future. And I'm going to move like an agent of the future in this time. And that's what I'm always inviting people to do, is like, well, how do you think it should be? Let's act that way now with each other. And the more, then people will look and they'll be like, what are y'all doing? I have so many people who say that to me, like, you just seem like, you know, free or something. You just seem like you're just, you know, and I'm like, yes, I'm not acting wildly. I'm just acting in accordance to my nature and finding other people who want to be free as well and to do it now. That's what my ancestors did. And every child in my life, I'm like, that's what I want you to do with your life. However you do it, I want you to be a free person right now today and see who wants to be free with you. You know, I love this cat, by the way.
Melody Pond loves a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And then I guess one more question to sort of like tie everything together.
Sure.
Song. We've talked about a lot of
Mm.
powers and everything. Speaking of Melody Pond, we've talked about song a lot today. And there's a lot of power of song throughout the trilogy, where
Yeah.
as Dune finds her magic, she's also finding her song. And her
Yeah.
song comes out very randomly at time. And we even had earlier, you sang for us and someone wrote something about a love song at the Lion's Gate. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
how does song inform your prose?
Yeah. I think that's helpful. It's taken me a while in my life to figure out. Hi, Liberty. Are we good? I see you there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm here to encourage us to move into Q&A soon, but I
Right.
want to hear the answer to this question first.
Okay, great. So yeah, so I'm someone who, since I came into this world, I've been singing. I love singing, and I was like formally trained as a singer, and I've tried like performing, and it's been really interesting to figure out how to work with my own song gift, right? That I'm like, I don't really like getting on a stage and trying to like perform something a certain way over and over again every time, right? So like I have great respect for like a Beyonce or a Lizzo or something like that, but I'm like, that's not me. I don't want a stadium of people where I have to perform for them. But there's something that has to come through me in song. And what I've recently been learning is like, that's my prayer practice. That's how I connect with the divine. That's how I tap into the rhythm of the world. And when I'm singing in prayer, it's so different. I never have a question about what my voice is going to do. I'm like, sometimes it's going to sound pretty, sometimes it's going to sound ugly, but I'm tapping into a frequency that allows me to connect with others and to connect with the moment. And then I feel at ease. I'm like, this is the song of the world I'm just tapping into. And then I'm not performing. And I'm very, my team knows this, that I'm very like, I'm not performing, like even when folks are like, you should use your platform this way and you need to make a video. Like, I'm like, that's not what I do. I don't do that. I don't put anything on there that's not what I'm feeling in that moment. I don't write a performative poem where I'm like, I think you need this, but I'm like, no. I write what I need. I sing the song I need to hear. that's the medicine that I need to receive. And it's even taken me a while to recognize, like, when these songs arrive for grievers, as they were coming, it was like I was writing and then I would hear this song coming in and I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a song here. There is just a song here, you know? And I was like, when I first started writing, I was like, Dune's not a singer. She doesn't identify as a singer, but then a song is just what comes through her. And I don't know about y'all, but like when I'm by myself, songs come. And I know a lot of people like this, they're like, yeah, like I wouldn't call myself a singer, but when I'm by myself, I'll be singing, or if I put on music, I'll be singing along to it. So I wanted to tap into that part of like all the songs that need to be sung by people who are like, I'm not a singer, I'm not a performer, but there's songs to sing. And I think humans have always done this. Like we found ways to sing together, to hum together, to breathe together, to be in frequency. I loved that, as the story is unfolding, it starts to be clear for Dune that the song is literally part of the medicine. So like the songs start really coming because she's singing for her grandmother as her grandmother's dying. And Grace Lee Boggs was my mentor. And when she was in hospice, Grace Lee Boggs is the character that Mama Vivian is inspired by. It's Dune's grandmother. And when Grace Lee Boggs in real life was in hospice, I would go visit her and, I would be like, what's on your mind, Grace? And she'd be like, nothing, nothing at all. And I'd be like, okay, so how do you want to spend our time together? Because it had always been talking. And I was like, so how do you want to spend it? She's like, will you sing me His Eye is on the Sparrow? I always love gospel. Will you sing me A Change Gonna Come? That was my husband's favorite song. Will you sing me? And she just wanted me to sing to her. And she would literally use me like a jukebox of her own memories and the sounds that she wanted. And that was how we spent our time together. And the medicine was so clear. Like I was like, she could barely hear. She has a hearing aid on both ears. And if she had a third ear, she'd need one on that too. She was like, I can barely hear you, but I hear you. I feel you. And I could see it, her face. She would just be laying there, her eyes closed, and she'd start smiling. And I was like, this is something just for her. This is a concert that she needs to hear. And I've had that experience now as a doula. I've had that experience now where I'm in a group, and instead of being like, here's the analysis I want to offer, it'll be like, here's the song I need to sing to y'all right now. And I'm trying to break down the barrier between talking and singing in my own life, so that when it's like the thing I need to express needs to come as a song, then that's how it comes. And it's really been liberating for me to let that be the case. So I feel like I learned that lesson with Dune, that I was like, just sometimes it's the song and we got to just sing it. And again, it's not about the performance. It's not about the perfect pitch. It's not about all of that. It's about like, there's an emotion that can only come through in the frequency of song. And um, I'm really interested in those emotions and those frequencies and like what that can do, especially in a group of people. I love a small group of people singing together in a living room and just like, oh my gosh, we touched on everything. We went to Mount Everest, yeah.
All right. I think that is the end of our conversation, but Liberty's gonna
Yeah.
tell us what questions we have in the chat.
Yeah,
Mm,
we've heard from several people. So thanks to folks who have submitted questions. I just want to throw a few to you, Adrienne.
great.
Yeah, somebody early on mentioned how much they loved your contribution in Octavia's Brood, and
Oh, good.
wondered if there might be parallels between the magic in Grievers and in your short story there.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the main connection is that in the river, it's like recognizing like the river is sentient, like the river is alive and it is carrying the memories of this city. And in Grievers, it's like the whole city is actually alive. The whole city has sentience. The whole city is watching and paying attention to the people, both the people that are still in bodies and also the ancestral presence of the city. And I think there's some cities that are like this where, earlier, Cindy, you said, which came first, the chicken or the egg, I'm like, I think about that with a place like when I go to New Orleans, I'm like, woo, it's thick with ghosts. This city is so alive. It has such a personality. It has such a history of its own, where New York feels very different. Paris feels very different. You know, Johannesburg feels very different. These are places where you can feel the thickness of the history. I think one of the things that can get lost sometimes when you're in a place where like um, that history is there, but it's been really paved over. You know, the trees have all been cut down. It's been concreted over. It doesn't mean you don't feel it, you know, but it's sometimes harder to access. But I love that idea of like Detroit has an energy of her own. She has something that she wants to happen. Um, so that feels like the through line between those stories. And in Octavia's Brood, the water woman in that story, I actually revisited in Fables and Spells, which is a collection of like other fiction short stories. There's two more stories, particularly about the water women and the waterway, that are also rooted in and around Detroit that have that relationship. So I kept, you know, and I think I will keep wanting to explore this idea of the aliveness of place, the aliveness of the earth. Lately I've been really tripping on like driving around just being like, all these trees are alive. These trees are alive and they're paying attention. These trees are alive and they're full of my ancestors. Like, just, it feels different to drive through the city and be like, everything is alive and aware of me. And if I turn towards it and bring attention to it, attention will come back to me. Um, it's really humbling. Like, if you've been raised to be like, only humans are the living earth, or humans and like our dogs or something. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, no, no, no. It's all alive. It's all alive. It's all got ancestor and spirit. It's all got intention. It's all alive. It's a very different way to live. You're no longer alone ever, right? You're just with different kinds of aliveness, ancestral aliveness, nature aliveness, human aliveness, animal aliveness. I want to learn to hear all those languages as concurrently as possible, to be like, I am part of a living world and I'm not the most important part of it, right? I'm in balance with this living world. So um, I also love the idea of vengeance, like that the earth has her own vengeance, maybe her own pettiness, her own like, you know, in this story, it's like the earth is like, you know what? If you don't care about this place, then you don't get to be in it. Like I love that, you know? Like I don't set my boundaries that hard, but I like that the city was like, no, fuck y'all. You don't get to come just be here. Like if you don't know how to respect it, right? Which in general, that's the feeling I get from the earth right now. It's like, you know what? Don't take this for granted. You don't just get to be here. Um, if you can't figure out how to be in balance. And I think that's the precarity of our species right now, is like, if we don't figure out how to be in right relationship with everything else that's alive, I think we're going to be the thing that doesn't get to continue. And I think that's appropriate. And so I'm really, a lot of my mission on earth right now is to figure out if I can help our species get more compatible with our earth and with each other, you know? And so I think if you can look at the place that you're in and see the aliveness of it, that helps to move towards that compatibility. Right? Just like when you're dating and you're like, oh, you're your own person. Let me act as if you're your own person and I'm my own person and we have to collaborate. That's the same with the tree in your backyard. You are a living creature. As Indigenous people say, you're my relative. This is all, everything is my relative, right? Then you act differently. You know, even mowing the lawn becomes a different activity, right? I'm like, what if I'm not just interacting with you to make you work for me? What if I'm interacting with you so that we are in balance? It's a different approach. You know?
That's awesome. And I love that there are so many characters in your books who are not human. I
Yeah.
love dogs, really short little
Dog.
chapter section. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so another question, we've got someone who's asking, perhaps this is a very, I've read the books and I have a specific question about characters' relationships question, which I feel like people
Oh, good.
deserve to be able to ask. So let's do one of those. So this attendee says, with the buildup between Dune and Rio and your obvious ability to write love/sex scenes, yes, these books are very sexy.
Thank you.
I was curious of the choice not to write a sex scene for them. I was waiting 2 hearts. Any thoughts
Well,
on that very interesting relationship?
yeah, I mean, Dune and Rio are very hot, and I I did write a really hot, sexy scene between Dune and Rio, which is revisited in the third book as like a dream sort of sequence or a fantasy sequence. And when I initially wrote it, it was initially, I think at the end of Maroons, if I'm not mistaken, right, Sanina, that I had like them, I was like, they're fucking, they get to it, right? And it was a really hot scene. But then after I had written it, I was like, this would be out of integrity. The way the way that they would have moved into it in that moment, I was like, this would have been out of integrity for where they were in their relationships. And it felt really important to me that we actually wrestle with something different than, oh, they're off cheating, or they're off kind of moving out of alignment. I really wanted to be like, if they are to consummate their relationship, they're going to do it in a way that is respectful to their different people that they're in relationship with. So there's a fantasy sex scene that happens at the beginning of Ancestors, where you do get a sense of what their sex is like. Um, but then, without giving too much spoilers, there's also, and I think people maybe have dealt with this, but when you're trying to practice non-monogamy, it's like you're trying to not just balance the attraction you have for someone, but all of the other factors that are going on. And so both Dune and Rio are in existing relationships that they're having to figure out, like, how do I be sensitive to the needs, the emotional well-being, the health of my partner, the health of our community. And yeah, it was actually me. I was like really trying to be in a practice for myself, with this one, where I was like, yeah, there's been people that I'm like, I really want to go just hop on that person and go for it. And that person is with someone who mentally can't actually handle this, or that person, they haven't actually gotten the agreement and the consent to move into this relationship with me. So right now it has to be kept as something fantastical because we haven't done the work it would take to let it be, to let it really be. But yeah, they do get it on and it's good. you know, um, and it's really important to me that that there's a practice of honoring. I think so often with non-monogamy, um, I'm so curious about how we bring everything into the light and how we practice integrity inside of non-monogamy. And it's really on Rio in this book, in that set of books. It's really like Rio needs to go and figure out how they navigate the reality of what they want. Because people will be like, oh yeah, I'm in a non-monogamous relationship and I'm doing things that I know really hurt my partner. And I'm like, okay, that's not the point of non-monogamy. Is just be like, well, this makes you uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, to me, that's not the way I roll. Um, yeah, I think I can't think about how to say more about it without giving too much away. But yeah, but I also understand. I'm like, I could have written several chapters of just the two of them having sex with each other because it is delicious.
And you do an incredible job of showing non-monogamy as something that can be really difficult, and yet
Yeah,
all the characters are like showing up with a
yeah,
lot of integrity and care for each other. Even in like fight scenes, I love
yes,
how there's like this tenderness.
there's
And
tenderness.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's what's under it. Like, I think even when people are like, oh, I don't want to police my partner, and I don't think that that's what's happening. I don't think like Rio doesn't want to be in a trap, and Rio's partner doesn't want to trap them. But I think that there's, especially in Apocalypse, maybe I'll add this layer to it, right? Which is like, we're at the end of a certain world here. And maybe this happened to some of y'all during COVID, where you're like, I just need someone to be with me in this moment. Like, I need someone who's going to prioritize me in this moment. And then you find some stability or solidity. And then it's like, wait, the world is still the world. This world is still changing, right? And I wanted to show that's like, after the initial crisis, when we're in a new situation, it's like, okay, do the relationships now get to shift, right? Um, in a different way, like Dawood, who's, the person that Dune is loving and practicing with, you know, Dawood is really like, I need to feel free. I really need to feel free. And for Dune, it's like, I want to feel free by being able to have sex or intimacy with whoever I want to feel it with. With Dawood, it's like, I want to feel free by knowing I can leave the city and come back. That freedom looks different for everybody, but everyone needs to feel it. And that's what we're negotiating always with non-monogamy, is how do I love you such that you feel free? How do you love me such that I feel free? And that freedom doesn't have to mean I feel endangered, or I feel like I can't trust you, or I feel like you want to act as if I don't exist sometimes, you know? Um, but I also wanted to say, like, if two people do have that draw and that attraction to each other, even if it makes the partner uncomfortable, that's not a reason to not explore it. It's just, how do I do this with integrity? And I've had that experience in my non-monogamy where I'm like, I'd rather you didn't hang out with that person. I don't like them or whatever, but you're going to hang out with them. And I'm just going to feel how I feel about it. And we'll keep it moving, you know? Or I've also had the experience where I'm like, I'm not mentally stable enough for us to be exploring that right now. And maybe that means we need to break up, or maybe that means we need to set a boundary in a different way for a while. Everything changes though. And in my partnerships where people have been like, okay, we can pause on sleeping around for a minute, right? And just really root ourselves a little bit more and then reopen the practice. Or we can be in a practice where it's like, if we're going to pursue something, we pursue it together. We can be in that practice. Like, it's really like figuring out, what are your needs, what are my needs, and how do we practice it together? Um, yeah, but I really did enjoy, um, I have to go back and look, but I really did enjoy like the like the way Rio smells to Dune. Like, it's such a primal energy between them. And it's almost like the most erotic things that happen between them are crying together or showing up for each other in a crisis. And like, sometimes that's also how non-monogamy works. It's like there's all this like sexual energy, but it's actually about something deeper than that, or something other than that. There's another sexual relationship that happens in the third book that is like sexual spiritual. And it was like, sometimes it's not actually about the sex. We get so hung up on that, but it's actually about something much deeper, and something that can only happen between these two people. It's not actually a threat to anything else, right? But how do you start to understand, like, I'm not trying to threaten you. There's something here that I need to explore.
There are so many questions I want to ask. There's more good questions in the Q&A. I want to talk about disaster and utopia and the
Yeah.
power of imagining like utopia in our lived spaces together. We're not going to have time for all that. So instead, I think what we have to close out on is hearing from both of y'all about what projects you're working on next. Adrienne, I want to know, are we going to get any more stories that in the world of Grievers? Nina, what are you editing currently? Please let us know how we can follow along for your next adventures.
Awesome. Well, I definitely think, I'm a big Ursula Le Guin fan, and she has this whole thing called the Hainish cycle, where there's just like tons and tons of stories that kind of tie back to this world. And in the same way, like, I think the river kind of predates and connects to this story. There might be more stories here. Right now, I feel fairly complete with what I'm thinking of as like the Detroit stories, right? I'm like, I think I told those. I would be interested in like fan fiction, or if people are like, oh, it's like, you write a love scene for Rio and do, like, I'm like, go ahead, keep exploring that world. Um, I'm starting to feel, I think if there were more stories that happen in this realm, it would be about how does this pocket practice spread to other places. So there is a part of me that's very interested in like, okay, 25 years on from this, what's happening? Are there more cities that have this sort of protective natural relationship going on? Are there more places that are in deep relationship with the earth and really partnering with the earth to figure out a way forward? I'm really like, I'm so excited by the technology that emerges in the story between the people and the planet, but I would want to explore it in other places. So that's one of the things. The second is, the big book that I'm working on next is actually nonfiction, and it's a book of love stories. And it's like looking at my own life and how love has allowed me to liberate myself from patriarchy, liberate myself from militarism, liberate myself from capitalism, liberate myself from um, small mindedness and from other people's fear of me. And I'm like, love, I really want to talk about how hate is like legislating and leading and guiding everything right now. And we're so scared of love, and talking about love in a non-cliched way and taking it seriously. So that's the big book I'm working on, and it feels massive. It's you know, I keep saying, I'm like, I want to write a masterpiece. You know, I want to really lean into something that feels like I take my time and really like, you know, get to spend a lot of time in it. Cause I, you know, and Sanina knows this, but like all my books have been written like on the edge of a very full life. You know, like I've been like, okay, I have 3, 4 jobs and I'm also trying to write a book. This time I'm like, no, I got a book deal where I only have to write this book for the next year. That's just the only thing I'm doing. And it's kind of an abundance of time. I'm really like, what the hell do I even do with this? I'm going to write a 5,000 word book, but I'm working on that too. Right. And then I do have a bunch of fiction that's in me that I'm trying to figure out like the right form. Um, I might do a flash fiction collection. I might do something that's like, I might do another short story collection. I really love short story form, and want to spend more time there. Yeah, and then I'm working on music, figuring out like how to grab these songs of prayer and put them in the right places. So those are some of the things I'm working on. What about you, Sanina?
I also have 3 jobs. So in the realm publishing for Black Dawn. Right now, I'm working on another trilogy. So Adrienne
Yay.
trilogy was my first trilogy. I'm working on another trilogy with Eric McBay. Inversion was the first book, and we are working on copy edits for Recursion. So you can, and Arik is delivering the 3rd book soon as well. He just writes like crazy. So I'm very, very excited about that. I needed a space novella or a space novella series in Black Dawn, and so Arik's giving me
Yeah.
that. The next book we're working on, we haven't announced it just yet, so you're hearing this first here. But I am working on editing a superhero book
Yes.
with
Oh, yeah.
parallels between cops and power control and abuse cycles.
Great.
That will be coming out, or that will be getting announced soon, and you'll hear more about that. Thinking of some very satirical cover illustration and title combinations. A nice cliche title with a very disturbing cover. Always gets me. And then my other job, I am the program director for Drag Artists for Expression NYC, formerly known as Drag Story Hour NYC. So I am always programming drag story hours for all the kids in New York at the libraries and the schools. And I also do performance art. So I'm working on costumes and also working on my voice and learning how to blend singing with dancing at the same time while also
Yeah.
fabric around.
Come on, Beyonce.
That
You have to start singing on the treadmill.
that's my magic. That is always my, whenever I light up my altar, sometimes I just put the candles on, turn all the lights out, and just dance.
I love that. I love that.
Well, thank you so much to both of you all for spending an afternoon with us. It's been a huge pleasure. These books were such a gift, and I look forward to speaking with both of you again someday soon.
Yes.
Thank you, love. Thank you so much for hosting this.
Thanks to
Thank you.
everybody who joined in. Take care.